And now we are unified and wishing all of you a Merry Christmas, Happy Monday. I mean, it's been Christmas time for me for a month now. But Todd and Aaron are officially on board now. We are now your Christmas triumvirate. Happy Monday. Hope you had a fantastic Thanksgiving weekend. I'm Steve Deace with Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre. We had a fantastic Thanksgiving weekend, and given the way the week was going before Thanksgiving last week, didn't anticipate that's how it was going to end up, but I cannot complain. How about all y'all?
It was awesome.
Yeah, it was good.
Good? No complaints?
Yeah.
Everybody still alive?
Yeah.
All right. Nobody's wives left them, at least not yet.
Fully alive.
Fully alive, Erzin says. We are brought to you by our friends over at First Cup Coffee Company, the Christian-owned Patriot Coffee Company that stands for the same core values that you do, faith, family, and freedom. But don't get their coffee just because of that. Get it because it's really good with a flavor for every freedom-loving American. Try it for yourself right now, or try it all over again because it is really good. Just go to firstcup.com. Use the promo code DACE at checkout for the discount. Firstcup.com, promo code DACE. All right, coming up at the bottom of the hour, we'll be joined by our good friend Bob Vanderplots. Next hour, it's been a minute since we've done an Ask Me Anything, so we're going to hand that first Monday in December off to you. We've got questions lined up that Todd has chosen from our followers over on Facebook, and we'll answer as many of those next hour as we possibly can. But first, let's hear from Aaron with what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by breaking news, Democrats lie.
Presidential promise to put the law before family.
I said I abide by the jury decision. I will do that, and I will not pardon him.
Letting the world know that he will not wipe away the decision of 12 of his son's peers.
Was asked directly, and he has said he wouldn't pardon his son if he gets convicted.
Let's wait and see what happens if he loses.
Yeah, but he said it.
He's going to get pardoned by his dad. There's no question about that.
The president has ruled out pardoning his son.
Major commitment from the president, accepting the outcome of the trial and also pledging not to pardon his son.
So the challenge for him is really to continue to live up to his values when it was really personal, and he did that today.
It seems like a pretty normal, straightforward answer, but it takes new weight when we see what Trump is saying about the outcome of his trial, what we're hearing from other Republicans who say they don't accept the jury's verdict here in New York.
The contrast is profound. To sit there and say, well, I'm not going to intervene in the legal process, and I wouldn't pardon my son. One side, Democrats and Joe Biden protecting the justice system. And on the other, Republicans and Trump protecting Trump.
That supercut from Grabian goes on for another 8 minutes. And of course, it's all totally bunk. Not really a huge surprise that Joe Biden ended up pardoning Hunter Biden last night. Not even a huge surprise that instead of just pardoning his son for the gun and tax crimes he was found guilty of, the senior Biden did a blanket, broad pardon for any potential federal crimes Hunter might have committed between 2014 and this year. 2014, of course, is the year the younger Biden joined the board of the shady Ukrainian gas company Burisma. Why now? Well, Hunter was set to be sentenced for those aforementioned gun and tax crimes later this month. Joe Biden claimed his son was being singled out and otherwise unfairly treated. Ex-post from Joe Biden on May 31st of this year, quote, "No one is above the law." So not really a huge surprise. Joe pardoned Hunter, but doesn't make any of it any less corrupt, abusive of power, and shady AF. Donald Trump reacted on Truth Social saying, quote, "Does the pardon given by Joe to Hunter include the J6 hostages who have now been imprisoned for years? Such an abuse and miscarriage of justice." Speaking of Trump, he announced over the weekend he's nominating Kash Patel to serve as his FBI director. Patel has an extensive background in and around the intel community and was a crucial figure within the government itself in blowing up the Russian collusion hoax the deep state cooked up during Trump's first administration. He told Glenn Beck during an interview a while ago, if he were named FBI director, he intends to blow up the Jeffrey Epstein files on day one.
Who has Jeffrey Epstein's
Black Book?
Black Book?
FBI.
But who? That is, that I mean, there's...
Oh, that's under direct control of the director of the FBI. Just like the manifesto from the Nashville school shooting of the Catholic school.
Yeah.
We still haven't seen that, right? It's not the Nashville police or PD saying we don't want this out. The FBI airmailed into that operation and said this is not getting out. Because they do that because this is another government gangster operation. All these local law enforcement communities get funding from the DOJ and FBI for local programs. And if you don't cooperate, you're not getting your $1 million for this, and you're not getting and that's a lot of money to these local districts. That's how they play the game. That's why you don't have a black book. Or the
but the black book, it's not just sitting. I mean, that's Hoover power times 10.
And to me, that's a thing I think President Trump should run on. On day one, roll out the black book.
On the prospect of FBI Director Patel, former FBI Deputy Director and Russia collusion simp Andrew McCabe says he still has no self-awareness.
My main concern is what it says about Donald Trump's intention for the FBI and where Kash Patel might take the FBI if he's confirmed as director. And that all points in one direction, and that is back to the FBI's regretful history of acting as essentially the enforcement arm for the president's political activities.
Trump has also picked Hillsborough County, Florida Sheriff Chad Chronister to lead the Drug Enforcement Administration quickly. Concerns were raised about Chronister's conduct during the early parts of COVID, notably that he arrested a pastor by the name of Rodney Howard Brown for flouting COVID restrictions. Well, now Rodney Howard Brown, the pastor who was arrested by Chronister, says Chronister has his full endorsement for head of the DEA and even interviewed him about his new post.
Well, I want to greet you. I'm Pastor Rodney Brown, pastor of River Tampa Bay Church, and I'm here with my friend, Sheriff Chad Chronister, who I've known for many years. And yes, I did get arrested during COVID, but we've always been friends, and we remain friends today. And I just wanted to have him here today to say that I fully endorse the nomination of 47 for his position as head of the DEA. So we're glad to have you here today, and just to say we're 100% behind you.
Thank you, Pastor Rodney. I have always appreciated that you know that I'm a follow-law sheriff, and I was following the law back then. And lousy laws, good laws, you have to be the sheriff and do your job, and you always understood that.
What do you mean,
I'm proud that Florida was the first to roll back all those COVID restrictions, and it certainly was a very happy day when I was able to call the state attorney and say, drop those charges against you. You've been a true friend, and I'm so grateful and blessed by the friendship and love that we share. Thank you for your support.
Trump also announced over the weekend he'll slap a 100% tariff on any member of the BRICS conglomeration of nations who try to replace the U.S. dollar as the world reserve currency. In other news, the San Jose State women's and one dude's volleyball season is mercifully at an end. The coach of San Jose State played the victim, saying his team was unfairly targeted for playing a man in their matches against women. The New York Times came out with a dismissive piece over the weekend bemoaning so-called transphobia in the Times story. The publication referred to actual, real biological women as, quote, non-transgender women. Can't make that poop up. Filmmaker Dinesh D'Souza is apologizing for elements of his documentary 2,000 Mules. D'Souza says the organization True the Vote, which analyzes cell phone geolocation data, provided his team with security camera footage, which they say corresponded with their cell phone geo-tracking data. Now, D'Souza says it appears the footage True the Vote provided doesn't actually line up with the data of geolocation they were provided. Essentially, what this means is that some of the core footage used to make the case that voter fraud was happening via ballot drop boxes was false, and D'Souza is apologizing to an Atlanta man shown in the film who was dropping off votes for himself, his wife, and his 3 adult children who all lived at the same address. D'Souza had claimed that footage of the man dropping off those ballots was a key example of voter fraud in the 2020 election. That's false. And finally, we now end with how we began, with this from the Babylon Bee. America starting to think this Joe Biden guy might be a liar. And that's what happened while we were away.
Aaron's montage brought to you by our friends over at Preborn. If we learned anything from this just concluded election cycle, it is to fight, and especially the issue of exterminating life. I mean, the Democratic Party based almost an entire national campaign around that singular issue. And that's why you need to know about Preborn. Their network of clinics are positioned in the highest baby killing areas. And that's because they're fighting for mothers who are deciding between life and deaths for their unborn children. By introducing a mother to her child on a free ultrasound, they double the chances that the mom will choose life. And then they show those babies and their moms God's love by providing additional assistance, counseling, prenatal care, postnatal care, car seats, formula, etc. for up to 2 years. And all of this is free, provided they have the funding from people like us, because it's not actually free. It's just free to the mom and her baby. So now if you want to make your end of the year tax deductible gift, what better cause I can think of than preborn? I can't. So let's do it right now. In fact, they've got a match going on right now where your gift could be doubled. So to donate, dial pound 250, say the keyword baby. That's pound 250, say the keyword baby. Or just do what our family does when we donate to Preborn. Just go to preborn.com/Steve. Again, preborn.com/Steve. You guys here at The Blaze, this audience, you have been incredibly generous to Preborn. So let's keep it rolling. You're literally saving lives. Preborn.com/Steve. And I got to tell you, there is so much in Aaron's montage. This is what happens when you have a 5-day weekend, right? There's so much in Aaron's montage we could do entire shows about, or the entire opening monologue about. But I definitely think the number one thing we have to discuss is the Hunter Biden pardon and the ramifications of this.
Indeed.
And then we'll see how much time is left over to get some of the other things. I'm not optimistic there'll be much, but we'll see. Okay. Here's the thing. If I saw our senator over the weekend, and I have an interesting relationship with Senator Charles Grassley. I don't like him, and I don't vote for him, and he doesn't talk to me. I think the last time him and I talked was when I first took over at WHO Radio. And I found out that the Chuck Wagon wanted the American taxpayer to foot a $50 million bill for his earmark, because he wanted to build an indoor rainforest in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. You remember this?
Of course.
Yeah. An indoor rainforest in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And I went ape on that on the air and just ridiculed it, killed it. And then I was told a couple of years later with Obamacare, because our state has the highest congregation of health insurance providers, corporate offices in America. I think a lot of people in Connecticut is the insurance capital. It is when you're looking at like life insurance and all the various kinds of insurance. But in terms of health insurance, Iowa is actually the capital. Okay. Principal's corporate offices are headquartered here. Blue Cross Blue Shield's corporate offices are headquartered here. And the Chuck Wagon was at the negotiating table with the Obama administration, because the insurance companies this time were all for Obamacare, because it was going to mandate that we had to buy their product, right? What business would stand in the way of government using its coercive force to say you have to purchase their product and service, even if you don't want it?
There's just too much money, Steve.
Indeed. And I raised a stink about that, and the old Chuck Wagon had quite the, when he came home for the August recess that year, the old Chuck Wagon had quite the welcoming committee, I guess we'll put it that way. When he came home for the August recess and did his town halls around the state of Iowa, he had quite the welcoming committee. So let's just say it's been a minute since the Chuckster and I have had any good conversations. All right. I saw on X over the weekend, and I'm hoping this is a troll. I'm hoping that it is. Or I just want to believe the dude's literally a hundy and his mind ain't right. But our U.S. Senator posted over the weekend, gentlemen, that he was personally disappointed, that he really thought Joe Biden was going to keep his word and not pardon his son.
Didn't he also say this weekend, though, that he's running again at the age of 90 some?
Yes. The thing is, they can't. I should be careful what I say about that. I don't want to get people in trouble. Let's just say that the Chuck is doing everything he can to position his grandson to take his place in the Senate and is not getting his way and may just keep running over and over again until he does. All right. Dead or alive, baby. Dead or alive. All right. But anybody with an IQ hovering just above double digits did not believe that Joe Biden was not going to pardon Hunter Biden. Did anybody believe this? Seriously, did anyone seriously believe this?
Yes.
There's only one kind of person other than someone who should not be able to operate a motor vehicle with a license. That level of motor dysfunction. There's only someone with that, other than that, just someone who is so embedded in their own cult that they've become a self-imposed sociopath at that point. Todd, you're nodding your head yes. Okay.
Yes.
So
lots of that.
So when you are watching that Grabian compilation that Aaron shared, what you're watching there are, and I don't know these individuals, so I on a personal basis, a few of them I've had run-ins with here and there, but I don't know any of them well enough to tell you which it is. But what you're watching there are people that are either so self-deluded by their own cult,
the kind of people who write the words non-transgender women.
That they have self-imposed sociopathy upon themselves because of the level of buy-in in their cult, or they're such accomplished liars that they're a sociopath of another means, meaning that this one is intentional. It wasn't just, oh man, I stepped on a rake, I'm in a cult, and I've been conditioned and I can't let it go. No, this is where you go from, oh no, I'm in a cult, to I am the cult. All right, we're dealing with sociopaths either way, and the confidence and the smugness and the sanctimony. Trust me, I'm Steve Deace. I know some good sanctimony when I see it. Can I get an amen on that, Trotters?
Very true. Very true. Undeniably so.
You weren't supposed to say yes. At least not that instantly and emphatically, for goodness sakes. It's the holiday season, man. Have my back for at least 5 seconds, would you please? All right? Goodness. Anyway, it's true, though. Anyway, it's all true, actually. The level of smugness, though, the eagerness to lecture to you. What is it you like to say? The lie is the point, right? Mm-hmm. That either the lie is the point or they're deeply deluded by the lie themselves. One is a wolf, one is a sheep. But this is another reminder. I saw my buddy David Limbaugh posted over the weekend. He said something on X. It was just a few years ago I would have bristled at the term conspiracy theorist. And frankly, if you're a righty, you should bristle at it inherently. Because if you view yourself as a righty, then you view yourself as predominantly a seeker of truth and logic, correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right. And so the idea that that there really isn't any truth out there, or it cannot be found, or it should be the counter to whatever we're told, that's very simplistic. On the other hand, he said, after what I've witnessed the last few years, I don't bristle at the term anymore. I don't either. I mean, the trigger for me, I was open to, this is a brave new world with what happened with Brett Kavanaugh, but the final trigger for me is when I watched many of those same people in many of those clips Aaron just shared talking about he's never going to pardon Hunter Biden. And many of those same platforms tell us that natural immunity doesn't exist. It's a scam. It's a right-wing talking point. Well, I mean, what did we do? How'd we survive actual plagues way worse than this one as a species for 6,300 years of recorded human history, because we didn't have vaccines until the late 18th century. And they were very primitive in nature then. So how'd we survive plagues with like 25% IFRs, like bubonic? How did we survive that as a species? And it made me realize, like you said at the time, Todd, if we're going to fall for trannyism, we'll fall for anything. If they're going to lie to us about natural immunity, then they're going to lie to us about literally everything on this story. They will lie to us about literally everything. You're not a conspiracy theorist if you don't trust anything they tell you at this point. You're awake. You're paying attention. So the question then becomes, how should we respond? I got reply from someone on X this morning, and it reads like something I would have said 2015, 2016, 2017, something I would have said pre-Kavanaugh. And I just out of curiosity, I clicked on the guy's bio, and he's a veteran, so thank you for your service if you're tuned into the show today. He's a veteran. It's clear he's a true conservative, true patriot, believer, truth seeker, right? But here's a truth he needs to hear. It is the year 2024, not 2015 or 2014. And let me say this to you as a veteran, stop fighting yesterday's war. What do I mean by that? His solution was, well, we should maybe look at reining in the executive branch and the powers of granting pardons. Both parties have abused it. The high-minded third way talking point. Man, I did a lot of sanctimonious shows over the years advocating for such things. I did. Then I saw them take a Supreme Court justice who I knew was actually going to agree with them more often than he has us, which he has, by the way. Now, Brett Kavanaugh has sided our way on a couple of major cases like Chevron and Roe, but by and large, he has sided with them more than us. And I watched them take a judge that I knew was going to do that and do him worse than they even tried to do Clarence Thomas, with far less credible quote-unquote witnesses. At least Anita Hill worked with Clarence Thomas at some point and had a connection. What's-her-nuts couldn't even come up a time that they even met, except for the time he apparently raped her, which she didn't tell anybody about for 30 years. Then there was the infamous Julie Swetnick, remember her? Brett Kavanaugh, marauding rapist, terrorizing the hills of Georgetown. This is not the era for diffusing power. This is the era for wielding it. We're in a war. And this is yet another reminder of this. We are in an open, cold civil war. And just as it was dumb to spend the entire decade of the 70s acquiescing during the last Cold War against the Soviets, spending the entire decade of the 70s signing SALT treaties they were just never going to obey, and constantly begging for summits, only to wake up one day and they've invaded Afghanistan, only to wake up one day and they've done this and they've done that. They just took that all as weakness because they were willing to acknowledge that this is, these worldviews are not reconcilable. They cannot peacefully coexist on this earth. The Soviet and Western view of the world cannot coexist. And the Soviets were the one side willing to act as if that was the case, right? Mm-hmm. And for the better part of 2 decades, we weren't. Then along comes a guy who says, we're going to stop doing that. I'm going to call your bluff. You want a Cold War? I'm going to give it to you. Soviet Union no longer exists. Well, unfortunately, much of that worldview ended up downloading into our mainframe here at home after it was defeated over there. So we're back to these worldviews are not reconcilable. They cannot share a culture. I'm not the one saying this. I'm not the one provoking it. They're showing us this. We could run montages like that, Aaron, once a week on virtually any significant issue, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
And they just would be just all smug, sanctimonious forms of just gaslighting. Just pick an issue on any issue, the border. 2 days before the 2024 debate between Biden and Trump on June 27th, CNN ran with a headline story on June 25th that Biden's dementia was a right-wing conspiracy theory. 2 days before he went out there in front of 60 plus million Americans and showed it to them live on television. Absolute liars like their father, who's the father of lies, will just whip it out, urinate right in your face, and tell you it's raining. Can't share with that. And you do that to people. They do that to us because they don't want to share with us. We're the ones that would be inclined to say, listen, if you guys all want to live in like California and Oregon, cool, we'll figure it out. Leave the rest of us the hell alone. I mean, we tried that for about 25 years, right? Mm-hmm. We're the people that would prefer not to go to DEFCON 1, even though we own all the guns. They're not going to let that happen. So we're going to have to defeat them.
And it's not just the damn lying. This is what drives me nuts, Steve. They enjoyed hurting us. They enjoyed hurting people. They allowed...
Oh, that's exactly where I'm going to go next.
They allowed for frickin' open borders, and if your daughter got raped and murdered, so be it, so they could cheat at elections.
Yes.
God knows what the hell's going on in Ukraine with that crime syndicate, but if inflation follows through and you can't afford a damn thing, whatever, we're also going to trans your kids, also of that poisonous jab. They enjoyed hurting you.
Correct.
That's what the lies were for. And now there's no consequences on your side. Oh, you're going to pay for it. You're damn right you're going to pay for that.
Correct. And that must happen now. This is not the time for high-minded talk, third ways, diffusing of power. The social compact is broken. They broke it, and they did it on purpose. So now what there must be is justice. There must be retribution. There must be justice. At an absolute minimum, what Trump should do at an absolute minimum is issue preemptive pardons to himself, every member of his administration, every one of his donors, every one of his closest advisors and associates, anyone that there is a picture of with him and Trump, with them and Trump at Mar-a-Lago, ought to be issued a preemptive pardon from Donald Trump on January the 20th. Well, Steve, I don't know if preemptive pardons... Let's find out. Let's find out. Because the lawfare is obviously coming. Everybody, and I mean now everybody, I don't care, Proud Boy, I don't care. Quote me on that too. Everybody currently in prison for January 6th, pardons instantly. We don't trust any narratives. They still lie about all the cops that weren't killed and everything else. Nope. I tried to search for justice on this. I think we were the first show to platform Julie Kelly of anybody on the right when she first started reporting on this. If someone did it faster than us, then they just barely beat us. We tried to get to the truth of this. They don't want the truth of anything. So here's the truth then. If there's no justice, then there's no justice. You're going to protect your people. We're going to protect our own. So they're all out. Day one, January 20th, every single one of them out. No matter what they were charged with, out. Every one. The cop who shot Ashley Babbitt, charged. Charged with murder, federal crime. Everybody that is currently being prosecuted or facing incarceration for the FACE Act, instant pardons, every single one. And the prosecutors who prosecuted them, charged with crimes. We'll just make up what the crimes are. I'm sure we can come up with something. Violating civil rights. How about here's a crime for you. Violating the First Amendment rights. Congress shall make no law. Government shall make no law against the freedom of religion, right? Yep. Well, you tried to prosecute someone based on the freedom of their religion, so you're guilty of that crime. How you like them apples? You can pay the billable hours this time. At a minimum, those are the things that should occur here. At a minimum. Because just like the Soviet Union in the 80s, the only thing these people are going to listen to is the threat of mutually assured destruction. Anything short of that, and they'll just keep lying. Anything short of that, they'll just keep imposing more pain. Anything short of that, they're just going to keep gaslighting you because they're communists, just like the Soviets were, and that's what the Soviets did, and that's who these people are. So it is time for Trump and his administration to do to them domestically what the Reagan era did to this worldview globally. Break it. And use the full power and force given to you and bestowed upon you by the American people to do so. Well, I just saw yet another authorization from the Biden regime for arms to Ukraine. And right before the holiday, we saw that they authorized Ukraine striking into Russian territory. Here's why all this kind of stuff matters. You know, the Chinese are very close to the Russians. That's also where about 80% of the antibiotics in the world are manufactured is in China. That could be a problem, right?
Indeed.
That could be an issue, all right? So make sure that you have your that could never happen here insurance when it happens here yet again, all right? Because the Biden administration is doing everything they can possibly do to make it happen here. That could never happen here again. So get your case from Jace Medical. All right. The Jace case is a personalized emergency kit that contains essential antibiotics and medications that treat the most common and deadly bacterial infections. It provides 5 life-saving antibiotics like amoxicillin, doxycycline, and more for emergency use. You just fill out the simple form online and you'll have it in case you need it. But now there's add-on options too. And yeah, you can include ivermectin in your add-on option. In fact, they've got an expanding menu of medications that you can go to as well if you want to customize it. For example, you can customize it with ivermectin for only $30 as an add-on. All right. So go to jace.com right now. JASE, jace.com right now. Cold and flu season is here if you're north of the Sun Belt. So make sure that you are ready to go just in case that can never happen here. Happens here again. All right, jace.com. Enter the code DACE at checkout for the discount. Code DACE at checkout for the discount at jace.com. And let's welcome in our good friend Bob Vanderplotz. Good to see you, brother. How are you?
Doing really well. Happy Thanksgiving. Congratulations on a Michigan win. I guess the list could go on and on and on with you. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving.
Oh, we had a very good Thanksgiving. We did. That was, after that game ended, Noah and I just looked at each other and just kind of burst out laughing. It wasn't the most important win that Michigan's ever had over Ohio State, but sure as hell was the funniest one, I'll tell you that.
And wasn't it your granddaughter that was dressed in a...
Yeah, that picture's a few months old. Yeah, she's growing like she's growing like a weed right now. Yeah, okay. But we got to babysit her Saturday too. So almost right as the game was over, Anna texted us and she's like, "Can you guys watch Autumn at the last minute? I've really got to get out and see Wicked, man. I was going to try to stay away.
Like,
I know I can't."
We will. Yeah.
I'm like, "Yeah, you bet." Well, first of all, if we had lost, I would have been even more excited to watch her because I would have needed the mood changer.
Sure,
okay,
sure.
But on top of that, we had all kinds of fun. Her and I, she was over there for like 4 hours on Saturday.
So I can only imagine
we had a ton of fun.
that Autumn comes over and you give her a Michigan flag and say, "Autumn, this is how you plant it in Ohio State."
That's right. That's
field.
exactly right. Yes, indeed.
Right in our living room. There we are.
All right, let's get to some serious stuff.
You bet.
All right. So as you watch, we were talking about this before you came on, and Aaron played a fantastic montage from Grabian. All these self-righteous, sanctimonious, gaslighting clips of all these media. Well, he said that he wasn't going to pardon his son, and I believe our own senator claiming he believed him, which I told the audience, the Chuck Wagon has not spoken to me in about 15 years. I know you guys talk all the time, so I can't tell if that's a troll from him or not. Yeah. Okay, I don't know. I also don't know anybody that's 100, so I can't tell. Okay, but all these people coming forth like we're just shocked and dismayed. Apparently their IQs are, below 12 and should not be licensed for motor vehicles. Okay. But as you're watching Joe Biden do this, and you are seeing some Democrats saying he's lighting our party on fire by doing this on the way out the door, basically giving Trump all the political cover to do whatever, whether it's Kash Patel.
Sure.
Whatever Trump wants to do now, he's got total cover to do it. Right?
All the attacks you had on Trump about winning the election, about this is what he would do. He's going to politicize this. He's going to politicize the justice system. He's going after his enemies.
And of course, I fought him in the primary because I didn't think he'd actually do that stuff. I'm like, you guys keep accusing him of doing the stuff we wanted him to do, and he didn't do it the last time. Well, now it looks like he's going to actually do it this time.
And now Biden on his way out says, "Hey, this is how you do it."
Yep.
You tell everybody you're not going to do it, and this is how you do it. So I can see why they're upset. Steve, I think I saw Chuck Grassley's tweet as well about it. I believed him. But if you go back, Grassley and Biden served in the U.S. Senate for decades together. And remember when Biden ran the first time?
Yeah, it was before, I think right around the time I was born.
Well, that's for U.S. Senate. I'm talking about for president.
Oh, yeah, 1988.
Yeah.
Was the first time.
Right. And then when he ran...
I wasn't eligible for a driver's license yet, Bob. I'm a grandpa, and I couldn't get a driver's license the first time Joe Biden ran for president. Okay?
But when he ran in 2020... everybody's talking about this is the Joe. This is the guy. This is the guy you want to have a beer with. This is the guy. I mean, he's not left or
Uncle
right.
Joe.
He's kind of in the middle. He'll take the train from Delaware into Washington, D.C. He's that guy. And then when he got to be president, we found out, he's not that guy at all. Matter of fact, who's running this thing? And so, Steve, when I take a look at this, there's a lot of times where I'll counsel people all the time about, hey, leaders need to finish well. Because a lot of times leaders hang on way too long. Athletes hang on way too long. You want to see them, they leave at the top of their game. Michael Jordan, after 6 championships, I'm out here, I'm retired, I flirt coming back, but then you're right, I should have been retired, I leave. Biden here, though, what a horrible ending. You take a look at his presidency, and everybody's asking, who's running the country? Is it Barack Obama? Is it Michelle Obama? Is it George Soros? Who's running the country? But we know it's not him, right? Then he says, I'm going to run for president. Even though a lot of my party insiders, everybody says you shouldn't run, we need to find somebody who can beat Trump, all that kind of thing. I'm running for president. The first debate, just a complete, that thing's going to go down as a historically, the worst debate probably of all time performance. When he even walked on the stage as a bad debate performance. But now as you exit, after the sham of Kamala, after getting beat by Trump, the American people have spoken. You saying you would never politicize the justice system. You saying you would never offer a pardon to your son, Hunter, because that'd be politicizing it. You believe in an independent judiciary. Is that what we heard? I was walking out saying, just kidding. What an awful way to, the legacy he has left. You think about it. Since being president, the legacy he's going to leave from common person, common American Joe, to have a beer with him, ride a train with him. He's not this or that, but he's just a good guy. I'm telling you what, this is an awful way to end. So I look at it from a leadership perspective. What a terrible way to end.
Contrast that for a second with what we have seen thus far with Trump, and I will. Maybe you and I will use different wording than when you and I are talking about this privately. Okay. But when you and I have discussed what we have seen from him since election night and his transition as two guys who went all in against him in the primary here in Iowa, and because we were concerned that he wasn't going to finish well. He didn't finish his first term well. Mm-hmm. It was a 3-year term with mostly successes, and then that final year was one of the worst years any president has ever had. Mm-hmm. At least maybe in modern times, until maybe this last year with Joe Biden that you were just describing, and we were concerned that he wasn't going to learn from his mistakes. Didn't show a lot of humility, frankly, running in the primary. But over the last few months, you have seen a much more open, cordial Donald Trump, a much more engaging Donald Trump, a much more accessible Donald Trump, a way more disciplined Donald Trump. You've seen a Donald Trump go out of his way to articulate bold and specific policy initiatives and visions beyond anything he ever talked about in his first term or his first campaign. You can see now that with most of the cabinet, if I had to do a top 3 power rating of cabinet appointments right now, beyond RFK Jr. at number, to me, is going to be the clear number 1. I don't know that I could narrow it down after that. Right. There's been several. Now there's a couple that you're like, what was that? Like the DEA one. Mm-hmm. But most of these have been, like Dream Team. Like if we got together and did like a fantasy draft, this is some of the at least maybe not the name, but the profile of the kind of person we'd want him to appoint. Where on the other hand, now it does seem that Trump is now concerned about legacy. It does seem now that even look at his VP pick.
Oh, you bet.
He picked an heir apparent, okay? Someone that was a legitimate crown prince figure that could take on the mantle of MAGA after he is gone and take it and run with it in his own time. It does seem, in his case, he is operating with way more notion of legacy at stake than what you just described from Joe Biden.
Steve, I want to go back, first of all, about why you and I went in, basically to have DeSantis win and not have Trump get the nomination. My main reason was I didn't believe the American people would elect him again. I thought, we cannot have 4 more years of Biden and Kamala Harris. My main concern was the American people would not elect him. And then our other concern, if you'll recall, is that if he did get elected, we were afraid here comes in New York cronies or whoever else, and it's going to be way different than, say, the first term of some of these others. And what you're seeing is that, my goodness, it could be the shot that happened in Pennsylvania, that grazed him to say, I don't know what it is, but you're right, Steve. He is now interested in leaving a legacy. It's bold and courageous leadership. I believe you're hearing him use more spiritual talk about turning this country back to God. And to me, people are now excited about this type of leadership. His approval rating today is way north of what it's ever been.
He's above water for the first time.
But what it is, he's an optimistic leader. And instead of going as, listen, I'm bringing in the tired old establishment to help me lead this thing. And the media is saying, well, he's just bringing in loyalists. Yeah, they're not going to undermine his agenda. We elected him president. Let him bring in who he wants, but then let them lead. And what they're seeing from Biden and Kamala, they want something. You're seeing America hopeful and optimistic in a time that I have not seen them hopeful and optimistic for a long time. And it's because of what he is presenting as leadership. And you're right. He's way more accessible. He's way more, people like him. He's self-deprecating. Even with the garbage truck and the vest, he's self-deprecating. That's what they love about it. And so I think what Biden's doing, he's going to give a clear contrast, allow Trump come in and hopefully run the table in the first 100 days.
Tell us about, because you mentioned this coming in here this morning, and I'd not even heard this story. So tell us about what just happened in Emo, appropriately named, given the story you're about to tell us, Emo, Canada. What happened?
Emo, Canada. Some of your listeners, I'm sure, will have happened on this. But a small little community, Emo, Canada, just north of the Minnesota border. 1,300 residents. 1,300 residents. I mean, this is a Bob Newhart show, right? Mm-hmm. And the Human Rights Tribunal, that should give everybody a cause for pause. Right? The Human Rights Tribunal of Canada fined this little community $10,000 and basically sanctioned it because they didn't put an LGBTQ2, which I have no idea what the 2 is now, flag up in Canada. And they did not recognize June as Pride Month. And right away it came back to me, Steve, about this comment about you will be made to care. Mm-hmm. But to me, it's not even being made to care anymore. You will be made to publicly affirm and support. And so to me, here it is, you got Canada.
Something will always rule. Something must always be worshipped. There is no secular realm, and there never has been.
Exactly. So you take the contrast on now. You got Prime Minister Trudeau with his Human Rights Tribunal sanctioning this little town of Emo because why? I didn't put the flag and I didn't say June is Pride Month. To where you have Trump coming in. And the contrast of going, you know what? This country will be about 2 genders, and it's what you were assigned at birth. We're no longer mutilating kids. And by the way, this DEI nonsense, guys, I'm telling you what, maybe you're not seeing it, but read the Wall Street Journal, whatever. Companies are running from DEI right now. They're dropping it like crazy. Mm-hmm. They're bringing up a new thing called MEI, which is merit, excellence, and intelligence. I mean, things that you're like, this is what
America.
Yeah, this is what you should be measuring people on.
Yeah.
So to me, when I take a look at Canada and Prime Minister Trudeau going to Mar-a-Lago to kiss the ring to say, you know what, don't let me have those tariffs that you're mm-hmm. saying on me. But you got this little community being sanctioned because of this garbage. And now you have fresh leadership coming in and saying, no, we're going to right the ship. We're going to put it on solid foundation.
In 2 months, we're going to have the first major cultural event of every year in America. That's the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. And it's also one of the largest commercial expenditures that will occur in America every year as well, right?
Yep.
I will be, because all those commercials and everything are all being plotted out, and they're all being strategized in boardrooms with, PR and ad people right now as we speak. What's going to be featured? And I will be fascinated to see.
The woke is not selling, guys.
I will be to see if
they'll
people
run from it.
How many corporations go out there that first Sunday in February and spend, what is it typically, 30, 40, 50 million for like a 60-second spot? All right. How many will go out there and just waste their money talking to an audience that largely does not exist, or how many of them are going to truly see. That's all. Those are the kinds of things people can say a lot, but ultimately, where your heart is, your treasure will be also. Right?
Exactly.
All right. And so when they invest in it's the biggest non-traditional religious holiday event that America has is the Super Bowl, and so. That'll be our first indicator how many of these people truly got the message from this last election, I think.
Yeah, well, I think they really got it. And quite frankly, I think a lot of corporate America wants to get it as well. Like, you know what, we're done with this nonsense. This is about a value add, and is it profitable?
But they're gutless and didn't want to look like, they didn't want to be called bigots and get glitter bombed and bombed on social media.
But now you have Trump being president. You got Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy being in charge of Doge. I think they know where this train is running and what America said. So you can say what all these fringe groups want to say to you about America still is foundationally solid.
We got about a minute left. You wanted to say something about Thanksgiving?
Well, just about Thanksgiving, I think it's right. We put a lot of attention on the Pilgrims and about what that meant for religious liberty, what it meant for free enterprise. And so there's a lot of reasons why we put that there. But I also think we need to go back to George Washington, who really saw the divine intervention that gave him providence. Matter of fact, he used words like, I'm only a vessel in the hands of providence, meaning that there's something bigger here that America is about. But I think it also goes to Abe Lincoln, who really resurrected Thanksgiving Day, of saying both sides have forgotten who the Lord is. We're awash in blessings and we're killing each other. Mm-hmm. And so there's a part of me, Steve, where it says in Scripture, you never forget who the Lord is. So who is the Lord? And so I hope that with this country and the turn that we're seeing with a Trump election, and not that our hope is in a Trump election, but hopefully it's a ripple effect of our hope. And that is, who is the Lord? And let's turn our hearts back to him and remember, give him thanks for all the blessings that are bestowed upon this country.
Amen. Good stuff.
Good stuff.
All right, so we've got some Ask Me Anything, Todd. We got some good questions lined up for next hour.
I think so.
You were telling me it's an eclectic group of questions, meaning we're going to get to a wide array of topics, do you think?
Well, certainly amongst the, 150 submissions. I mean, they were all over the place. So I've got more than a dozen in there for you.
All right. What's your over-under, knowing what's coming, because I've not seen any of them. What's your over-under, how many of those I'm going to get to?
I think you might get close to all of them.
Really?
I think it's possible.
All right. See, look at you. Uplifted and hope-filled here in the Christmas season.
I am.
Yeah. All right, we'll come back. Hour 2 is next. Stay tuned. All right, back here with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast with Todd Erz and Aaron McIntyre. I am Steve Deace. And you can let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox. Steve@stevedeace.com is how you can email the show. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, me, we, and Gab. Follow me at Steve Deace Show on X or Twitter, as it used to be known, Instagram and TikTok. And then also please subscribe to our new YouTube channel. We have to start all over there because we just told you too much truth at the time that they demanded we lie, and we refused. So please go follow our new page on YouTube, at Deace Show there, at Deace Show on YouTube, and thank you very much for that. You can also, if you wouldn't mind and you love the podcast version, leave us a 5-star review. Appreciate all of you that have done that, and then you can make sure to hit subscribe, or in the case of iTunes, follow, and that way every time we do one of these new episodes, it shows up in your feed every single time. Thank you to those of you that have done that too. And thanks to our friends over at MD Hearing. If you're still paying thousands of dollars for hearing aids that don't even work right, well, MD Hearing is an FDA-registered rechargeable hearing aid that costs just a fraction of what typical hearing aids cost. Their new Neo model cost over 90% less than clinical hearing aids do. It fits right there inside your ear. No one's even going to know that it's there. Plus, MD Hearing is now launching the Neo XS. Now, that's its smallest hearing aid ever. All right, so this holiday season, get the hearing that you deserve with MD Hearing. Go to shopmdhearing.com. Use the promo code Steve to get a pair of hearing aids. Forget this, just $297. You cannot beat that. That's incredible. Plus, they're adding a free extra charging case. That's a $100 value just for listeners and viewers here of the Steve Deace Show. That's shopmdhearing.com. Use our promo code Steve. Get a pair of hearing aids for just $297. Plus, you can add a free extra charging case as well. You cannot beat this, folks. Promo code Steve at mdhearing.com. And with that, it is time to Ask Me Anything. We have questions from our followers on Facebook. Todd Erzin has selected those questions. I have not seen them yet. I will see them when all of you do as Aaron begins to ask them one by one. No topic is off limits. We'll see what topics you guys have chosen. Aaron, you may fire away, brother.
We'll begin with Jessica LaMonica Garofalo, who says, ironically, this is inspired by Todd. Last year, he recommended O Come, O Come Emmanuel by Trace Bundy, and I love the whole album. Any other recommendations for Christmas music that is more faith-based to bring the true spirit of Christmas?
I love Mercy Me's Christmas album from about 15, 20 years ago now. And it's got a really, I'm trying to remember what that instrument is. Is it like a ukulele? It's got a real original version of Silent Night on it as well.
A mandolin?
It's hard to describe, but it's really cool. But that whole album is really good. Casting Crowns did a great Christmas album too, probably about 10 or 15 years ago. So those are a couple I would highly recommend. And then, I like to hear all the traditional stuff. To me, the golden era of Christmas music is the Nat King Cole, Bing Crosby, Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra era, and everything. And they did all the great reverential stuff with great reverence. So those would be my recommendations. Dude, that was a great question to lead things off with, Todd.
Well, it said my name, so that's all I saw.
See, look what happens when Todd gets in the Christmas spirit, man. And you know what? I appreciate that, brother. Thank you.
Like I said, you let it brew and brew and brew, so that when it's time.
And now it's Commenso Festival, right?
It's time. I mean, I'm a fine wine. That's how
Serve no wine before it's time?
Exactly.
That was a great opening question. You guys have any recommendations you want to add to anything I just said?
I was hoping you wouldn't ask that, because this is going to make some people really mad. I want to preface this by saying I don't believe Joseph Smith was a prophet. The quality of Mormon Tabernacle Choir.
Oh, it's excellent.
It's
should have thought of that myself.
It is.
It's absolutely excellent.
That's the classic stuff right there as well. So.
It's funny, we were watching with my two daughters home from college. All of us were at home watching home videos, and that in the back of them, decorating Christmas tree one Christmas many years ago was that Trace Bundy album. So it was recently in my ear. But the other funny thing about that is there's another scene. We're outside, not Christmas playing, but in the background there's another voice, and it's a male voice. And I'm so used to it. My wife goes, "Is that Steve?" And this would be before I'm working on the show, but listening to him, and there we are in the yard, and it's the Steve Deace Show on radio playing in the background with an old family video. So.
Nice. So let me give you a couple of another. I think the most underrated Christmas song, in my view, is "Go Tell It on the Mountain." I think it's the most underrated one, and I think when it's done right, it's incredible. Okay, two of my favorite versions of that song, James Taylor did a version of that song for his Christmas album back in the day. And Anne Murray's version, Anne Murray's Christmas album, I mean, I was raised on that album from my mama. I mean, I can almost remember now the order of the tracks on that vinyl, okay? But her version of Go Tell It on the Mountain on that album, and her whole Christmas album from way back in the day now, you're probably going back like 40 years. I was a little kid. Great album. So, a buddy of mine was going through a tough time in his marriage earlier this year and reached out to me because we were going through a tough time in our marriage a few years ago. So it was still kind of fresh in our memory banks. And during one of our conversations about it, he said, "I'm reading this Tim Keller book right now and it's really helping me." And I froze because I wasn't sure how to respond. And so there's like 3 or 4 seconds of dead space on the phone. And then my buddy says, "Oh, don't worry. It's from like 2005. I said, "Okay, then you're okay." Like if you want to read like pre-2006, maybe Tim Keller, Aaron, you're probably in a really good place, right?
Yeah.
Okay. After that, dude, just, I don't know what happened. Okay. And how does that apply to this conversation? Because even if it's the guy that Carly Simon wrote the song You're So Vain About, if it was a Christmas album done sometime before the 21st century occurred by a mainstream artist, I should say, you're probably okay, right? You're probably okay.
Yeah.
I just thought of another Christmas album that's really good too, and then it skipped my memory banks. And I can't remember what it was because it was another mainstream art. Oh, Amy Grant's Christmas. Now, because she's gone nuts too. So she's hosting like gay weddings at her farm and everything else. Okay, she's gone nuts too. Okay, but her Christmas album from back in the mid 80s, has the greatest rendition of Hark the Herald Angels Sing I've ever heard. And maybe the greatest rendition of Angels We Have Heard on High I've ever heard too, because they mixed it. They did a melody. It starts off with What a Mighty Fortress Is Our God. It starts off with that. And then it goes into Angels We Have Heard on High. I mean, so again, it unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess you can look at it both ways. If you are looking for mainstream sources for reverential stuff and it's pre-early 2000s, you're probably in pretty good place. After that, buyer beware. Fair?
Yeah.
Okay.
Next up, we go to Levi Mevis, who says or asks, what's the difference between an independent Baptist church and a Reformed Baptist church?
This might be the most controversial question I've ever been given in the history of this. If you guys know anything about Baptists, okay, there's wrong answers only.
Excellent.
It's just because the independent Baptist church can mean like 1,000 different things.
Correct. Okay. I was going to go there too to start, Aaron. The other question is much easier for me to. The second half is much easier for me to answer. Okay. But a Reformed Baptist church would be somebody that's out of the tradition of Charles Spurgeon that I've been following as my tour guide on our study of Romans. So this would be someone who believes in election, does not believe that that God's just been waiting around for us to voluntarily choose to follow him or not, does not believe in that, believes in election, or what Paul describes as foreknowledge or predestination. And so so they right away, because of that, have some different, I wouldn't say some different theological and different ecclesiastical views from a typical Baptist. They're probably not dispensational either. I mean, you can be Reformed in your soteriology and dispensational in your eschatology. Like that's John MacArthur, right?
I think so.
I think that kind of describes him. For those of you that don't know what those words mean, I'm not trying to use fancy words just for effect. Soteriology is just the science or study of salvation. Okay, how are we saved? In the history of Christianity, there have been three views on that question. The first view is one that the other two dominant views both agree is heretical. Okay, and it starts off with human nature is basically good. All right, so this was favored by an avowed heretic named Pelagius. So you've maybe heard me use the term Pelagian at times. Was Josh Hawley the first politician I can remember to use the term Pelagian in a press release? I'm like, that's impressive. Okay, so Pelagius was a heretic. Human nature is not basically good. All right, every Orthodox, small o, vestige and branch of Christianity agrees human nature is not basically good. We are in need of a savior. So that view is taken out. And that's the view, if you go to that Protestia account on X, most of the videos they show you are from people who have the Pelagian view. Because if you start off believing that human nature is basically good, sooner or later you're going to end up in a place where I don't need a savior. And then sooner after that, you're going to end up in the place where I am my own savior. And then sooner after that, you're going to end up in a place where God actually needs to hear my opinions and my takes on things. Fair?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
The other two dominant views, and are the Reformed view. And now, let me say this as a caveat. Within these views, there are differing views. Okay? They're not all uniform. All right? So for example, okay, within the Reformed view, this would also be a Catholic Augustinian view. Some people believe in a single predestination. Some people believe in a double predestination. Okay? Meaning that God doesn't just predestine people to salvation, but also destruction. Like when he says, Jacob I loved, but Esau I hated. That Calvin was quoting from that. Paul will quote from that later on, by the way. We'll get into these, what's that, around Romans 9 or 10? So sometime next year, we'll get into those conversations in our Roman study. Okay? But this is the view that we cannot choose God. We're incapable of it because of our sin. It's too deep. So God must initiate. Now, how does that initiation happen? There's all kinds of arguments within that view. Sometimes it's referred to as the Calvinistic view, but he had his own view within that view. That view existed long before John Calvin. That view goes back to Augustine in the Church Fathers, frankly. And then the other view, the idea that we choose God of our own free will. And that when the Bible refers to predestination, it means that God saw into the future who would choose him and then chose them. Okay? That often nowadays is referred to as Arminianism, and that comes from a guy that named, I think it was Jacobus Arminius, who was a rival of Calvin's. His followers challenged Calvin and his followers post-Reformation. All right. The latter view is what most Baptist churches believe. Most Baptist churches believe that we choose God of our own free will. Now, there is a resurgence within Baptist circles of Reformed theology. And you see that with people like, if you're online, and you see that from like William Wolfe, who's from the Center for Baptist Leadership, right? Okay. I think our buddy Megan Basham would fall into this group. There's a particularly amongst boomers and amongst Gen Xers and millennials, there is a resurgence within Baptist circles of Reformed theology. And most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, if someone is Arminian, then they also have an eschatology that believes that the church will fail at the end of the era and have to be bailed out at the rapture. And most of the time, not all the time, like John MacArthur has these two, quixotic views simultaneously, okay? But most of the time, if someone is Reformed, then they don't believe that. They either believe the church will triumph in history or that the church, the city of man and the city of God, like Augustine taught, this is what Catholics believe, just fight back and forth here on earth until Jesus returns to settle accounts. All right. As for what independent Baptist means, it can mean all kinds of things. It can just mean we don't want to belong to the Southern Baptist Convention. It could mean we are... we're so fundy that we put the mental in fundamentalism, and we don't want to belong with any. It can mean we want to be more fun than the Southern Baptist. It can mean it's a catch-all term. I think it can mean a lot of different things. Is that fair, Aaron? You okay with that?
Yes.
All right. Any follow-up?
Wasn't Spurgeon Reformed Baptist?
Spurgeon was Reformed Baptist. Yeah. So, is there anything there that I need to close the loop on, or are we good on that question for now? Do you think?
I'm Catholic.
Okay. Did I leave anybody any questions there that need to be addressed?
Hundreds.
I'm sure.
Hundreds.
Yes. Okay. Well, I feel better already. All right, before we get to question 3, a word about our friends over at Patriot Mobile. If you are tired of supporting companies who hate you, unfortunately, you can't completely get around it. But fortunately, with one product, you can. All right, you don't have to give your money directly to companies who hate you and your country anymore. You can give it to our friends over at Patriot Mobile instead. I did 3 conference speaking engagements this year. Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, here in Des Moines, and Fort Worth, Texas. And in all 3 of those, Patriot Mobile was a sponsor. All 3. So when I've been telling you for years, they take the profits you give them and they reinvest them back into the kingdom. I've just, that's some anecdotal confirmation for you right there. I've seen it. Okay. And they've got a great product. I've seen that too. We finally made the switch during COVID. T-Mobile let us all know they're going to start censoring text messages. I called Patriot Mobile that afternoon and said, we got to make this happen. I thought it was going to be a huge hassle. It wasn't. They've been great. So if you want to make the switch today, get a free month of service when you do. If you use the offer code Steve, when you go to patriotmobile.com/Steve, use the offer code Steve to get a free month of service at patriotmobile.com/Steve. Free month of service today with the offer code Steve at patriotmobile.com/Steve.
All right, next up we go to Kent Miller, who says if COVID has taught us anything, it's that we no longer have much of a buffer between centralized authorities and the individual citizen. Therefore, should there continue to be a more critical role for the church, municipal, county, and state governments? If they're lacking, how so? What kind of value should we still be placing in these traditional mediating institutions?
The answer to your question is 100% unequivocally yes. As you've seen, for example, with the guidance that Joe Ladapo has given to people in the state of Florida compared to what every other health director and every other state in the union has been offering here for the last couple of years, right? The answer to your question, to the second part of your question, though, and I love the fact, who was it that asked that? I want to make sure I say their name.
That was Kent Miller.
I thought it was Kent. All right. So Kent, I love the way you framed your question because you also then said, well, then what would be the application of this? Then how would we do this? Before I can answer that question for you, though, see, that's actually the easiest part. How to do it is the easiest part. The hardest application, Kent, is the will to do so. And this is why you've heard me say we're not a nation of laws, and we never have been. We're a nation of political will, and we always will be. All right? So going back to his time on Frontline Doctors, Joe Ladapo had the will to challenge the conventional wisdom on this. Based on how he had been lied to with Fauciism, where they did a short shutdown in Florida after initially resisting it, and then waited for the smoldering ash that he was told was going to happen. And then Ron DeSantis we're a couple weeks into this, and we're not filling up all these beds. So what's going on here? And so he backed out. Same thing on the jab, right? Got told by the Biden administration, hey, Trump's jab is great. Give it to everybody. So they were the most aggressive state rolling it out, especially with their massive population of seniors, right? Okay. Then they started looking at the safety signals and the lack of effectiveness, and they were like, well, we're going to back out of this. Okay. So he was hired by a guy, Ladapo was, and Ron DeSantis, with the will to follow data and go with the actual data, no matter what pressure was being brought to bear by the political system and corporate media. Why do I bring up those examples? Because that's what's required to answer the second part of your question, Kent. If you have the will to do those things, like there was no precedent, there still remains no precedent for a state health director telling people not to get COVID jabs. They just created one based on the will to follow the data, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. There was no system to do the two things Ron DeSantis did, back away from Fauciism, back away from the jab based on data. It's just he had the will to act on those things based on the data, right? That's really, the old saying from your mama, when there's a will, there's a way, right? Okay. So we have to have the will first. And when you have the will, the way will show itself. Necessity becomes the mother of invention, Billy Shakespeare. So what's lacking right now is the will. That's what's lacking. Like you were just having a conversation during the break, Todd, about they want to bring the Baphomet statue back, the devil statue back here in our state again for Christmas, right? Okay. Yes. And there's all this talk about, well, how are we going to do this? Are we going to let them do it for one day or for an hour? Right. And is there going to be this? Or no. Those are all the wrong discussions.
Correct.
The first discussion that must be had is, will we? Will. The right term there is will. Okay. For the Christian, there are two questions, two words that define your ethics: can and will. Can and will. So when God says you cannot do this, you then say, I can't do it. Not that I won't do it, or will I do it? I can't do it. Right away now, you are expressing a theological statement. You are saying, I do not have permission from my Lord that even if I wanted to do this, I don't have permission from him to do this, so I cannot. So my conscience is not even going to wrestle with the will, because it's already convinced that it can't, right?
Yeah.
The other question then is, when it is a matter of conscience, then it does become about will we? Will we? All right? And this would be one of those moments now. A matter of conscience. Will we do this? First, we have to all agree we will not permit an observance to the devil in our legislatures. Once we agree to that, the way will present itself. Someone will stand up and say, I'll block the entrance. Someone will stand up and say, I'll file a lawsuit, that it's not really a religion. I'm just making stuff up now but the ways will come once the will presents itself. And I think we got to start there. Will we do this? And on your question about more subsidiarity when it comes to medical and healthcare policy, will we? Do we have governors and health administrators in place to have the will to do that? If you do, it'll happen. If you don't, it won't. So I would focus on the will more than the way at this point.
All right. Next, we go to Nick Aguirre, who says, why do Republicans hate unions so much? Please explain how this has become the general belief, and is there any way to reconcile this? I'm in a union, and most guys fall more in line with a more right-leaning belief system, but will not vote against their livelihood, so they individually vote blue, and the unions support Democrats, both with time and monetary donations.
So appreciate this question. I have discussed this many times over the years. Grew up in a union household. I'm still a Teamsters member in good standing. I had to join the union to work at UPS in college back in the day. They were great to me. We got paid excellent. I mean, I made $10-12 an hour as a part-time truck loader in 1991 and 92, which is pretty darn good money. And I made sure to leave. I paid up all my dues when I left, and so I actually believe, and have always believed historically, though they have faults like corruption and mob ties, that unions are in collective bargaining, maybe more so than union. Let's go back to what I just said a minute ago on the healthcare thing. All right, the union in and of itself is just an apparatus. We're talking about the will here. Collective bargaining is the will. The fact we came up with collective bargaining, the idea that the worker could combine their own interests for leverage, like a board of directors does for a company or a consortium of companies does, like in a chamber, like a chamber of commerce. The fact that the worker could now leverage their shared interests together in order to exert leverage in the marketplace, Marx never saw that coming. And I'm a firm historical believer that we had Red Scares here and Eugene Debs running for president as a communist from prison and everything else, but we never flirted, and never have until right now. And the Marxism we're flirting with is more of a cultural form than just an economic theory. But the reason why in our country we did not flirt as heavily, and we are behind the curve of where the West has succumbed to Marxist ideology. It's for two reasons. One, the Christian church, although weakening here in the States, is still way stronger than it is in any of those other old Western European nations. And of course, Marxism is satanic. And so that's why the church is a check and balance on it. The other is collective bargaining. We created collective bargaining and came up with something that Marx never foresaw. So I'm a big believer that workers should have the right to collective bargain. I do not believe that you should be forced to join a union. I'm a right to work guy. I don't believe you should be forced to join one. I don't. Nor do I believe that the state should be collecting union dues. And this is what Scott Walker got rid of in Wisconsin, and they tried to get rid of him twice, okay?
This is one of the problems. You should disavow, if you're in a private sector union, a lot of public sector unions.
Correct.
I think that's what you're saying.
Yes.
You're not doing any favors by supporting the teachers union.
Yeah, it's not the roofers guys and the drywallers who are screaming and like Khrushchev at their meetings. It's the AFSCME teacher union people. Yep. They're the ones doing it. Okay. I don't think there should be any public sector unions. I don't. So if you belong to one, I do not apologize. I don't think you already have an interest. If you're working for the government, you already have vested interest. You have a vote. You're a voter. And if you want to vote for a party that's going to give more government and keep your job, you're welcome to do that, right? So you already have an interest if you work for a public sector union. You have a vote. And you have your vote be heard. To then let you organize on top of that gives you double leverage over the average American taxpayer. And since they're the ones that are actually paying into the system to make your government job possible in the first place, that's Marxism, that's redistribution, and that's satanic. I disagree with it. So I think collective bargaining ought to be protected. I'm in favor, by the way, of project labor agreements. As long as we're going to allow earmarks for corporations and handouts for corporations, then if we're going to do that, then I think we ought to make sure that the guys and the people that are working on those jobs get paid the best wages. If we're handing out free money, right? If we're handing out free money, phony baloney money for public-private partnerships, then print some of that free money off for the guys actually doing the sweat labor and pay them an actual wage. Amen? So I'm with you on that, actually. I got into a ton of trouble locally when I backed the Democrats' project labor agreement bill on my own show back in the day. But I do not think government sector unions should be permitted. They should be outlawed. I think a lot of the back and forth just comes from the traditional Venn diagram. Democrats were aligned with unions politically. Republicans were aligned with corporations politically. Those interests are at odds. And so I think a lot of those odds come, frankly, just from that. But now you're seeing that the Democrats really don't care about you guys. They really only care about the government sector unions, really, and they barely care about them unless they're teachers. So you're watching that paradigm now get inverted and attacked by Trump. But really, much of that origin just comes down to that. And then the Teamsters actually endorsed Reagan, I believe, in 1980. That's the last time they endorsed a Republican. And then they got pissed that Reagan turned around and did, I think, the right thing by firing the air traffic controllers. We can't just have people dying in the skies because you guys want a couple more bucks an hour. I'm sorry, you're just not that important. The people in the planes are. So I'm all for you guys getting everything that the corporations get. Now, just to make it clear, I'm really in favor of nobody getting a damn thing. But we're not going to have that system anytime soon, right? I'm in favor of nobody getting a damn thing. Can I get any man on that? Sure. But if we're not going to have that system, then no, we're not doing a bunch of corporate benefits and earmarks to major corporations. We're going to make sure the guy that's supporting a family gets an actual wage. Then if we're just printing off money and doing phony money, then give people an actual wage, but they can actually live a nice American middle-class life with. Amen?
Sure.
Short of that, though, I also wouldn't give you guys any advantages either. That answer the question? I mean, I like the answer, but that's the best answer I got. More in a moment. All right, back here on the Steve Deace Show, powered by our friends over at Constitution Wealth. Now is the time. Do not rest on your laurels after the big election victory. Instead, take advantage of the moment right now. And there's lots of ways you can do that. For example, ponder this question. Are you ready to secure the future of American values for generations to come? Well, then, do you know if your investments are aligned with that renewed promise of our great nation and your values? That's where you need our friends at Constitution Wealth. Don't let your retirement dollars support the very causes that threatened our freedoms in the first place. Now's the time to use your shareholder proxy votes to keep woke companies accountable. Ensure your investments match your principles as well. Most people don't even know they can make a difference. Mutual funds, ETFs often vote on your behalf, but that doesn't mean you can't take control. So let's keep pushing forward, partnering with investment experts that share our values. And you can continue shaping the future by reducing the hold that ESG and DEI have on your financial portfolio. And Constitution Wealth can be your ally to that end, helping you protect everything that you stand for. So take action now. Visit constitutionwealth.com/blaze and sign up for a free consultation today. That's constitutionwealth.com/blaze. Again, that's constitutionwealth.com/blaze. I just got an interesting text from a birdie of mine. This is something we're going to discuss tomorrow during idolatry or not. So that's a tease.
Oh,
for tomorrow.
You're not even going to tell
I'm
us.
not even going to tease it right now. It's too good. It's too good to even let you know what it is we're going to be discussing. It's just this discussion. Oh, yeah. I can't wait to have it. All right. So just gird your loins in more ways than
Girded.
one for idolatry or not tomorrow. All right. Go ahead, Aaron. Back to Ask Me Anything.
All righty. We will continue with David Stansbury. What are your realistic expectations for the Department of Government Efficiency? Give me a floor and a ceiling for accomplishments in the first 2 years.
Well, first of all, you need to narrow your question, brother, to the first year. And I think the reason you're seeing Trump move so swiftly on everything right now is he now understands much of what he wants to do in his first term, he's got to set and lay the foundation for it in this very first year. We get into next year, in 26, and everyone's going to panic and shut it down and just try to win re-election. And then after that, frankly, he's kind of a lame duck, okay, because he can't run again. So now I don't know that you can ever turn Donald Trump into the fullness of what lame duck usually means. But whatever kind of lame duck Donald Trump could possibly be is what he'll be about 2027. So you're really asking me now about this year. And I can just give you one example of the power of this already. Just look at my other state senator. We started off talking about Chuck Grassley. Look at my other state's senator, Joni Ernst. She's a total waste of space. Just a complete waste of oxygen in the U.S. Senate. Has done nothing remarkable. Not a damn thing. And she's been there since 2014. She got elected in 2014. So she's done nothing remarkable except stand behind glitch during press conferences for about 9 years. That's about it. Now, all of a sudden, she's got all kinds of itemized wastes, frauds, and abuses to get rid of, which is drawing the righteous indignation of our good buddy Daniel Horowitz, of course. But again, that is indicative of probably the best thing that these people can do. I'm for getting rid of all the waste, fraud, and abuse we can, but not maybe for the reasons you think. Much of the waste, if we got rid of it all, it would not even put a ripple in the pond of our debt. Not even a ripple in the pond of it. But it would have tremendous political benefit because it would expose a lot of people in ways they've not had to be exposed before. I mean, it's not going to be 100%. Chances are, let me give you a profile of two people. Tell me which one is more likely to be leveraged to the hilt with earmarks and waste, fraud, and abuse. Fair? Okay. Loyal America First, pro-lifer, and goes to a spirit-filled church, at least as much as they can, given the schedule when you're in public office. That's hard, but they try to whenever they can and have demonstrated a reverence for America's founding traditions, and then any other kind of politician. Which one is more than likely going to be leveraged to the hilt in waste, fraud, abuse, and earmarks? Which one?
The latter. The
latter. No, it's not. The other group's not going to be 100%, right? No. There's going to be frauds and phonies in there, right? Okay.
Yes.
But overall, the kinds of people that DOJ would expose are because of going after these programs and itemizing them and naming them in public. Most of the time, the vast majority of the time, are going to be people who hate us. So even if, and Daniel is correct, this will do little to nothing in terms of much of the rationale for the level of debt we are currently incurring. Where I may slightly disagree with one of my best buddies, though, is I still think it has tremendous political benefit because we're just ripping fig leaves off of loins everywhere you go. And most of the loins that are going to get exposed are probably not people wearing our uniform. There'll be some, right? And if we got frauds in our own ranks, this is maybe where our show is going to be a little different than some other shows, okay? I'm totally fine, throwing some of my own frauds overboard to get all of theirs, aren't you? Mm-hmm. You can have them. Hey, yep, you're right. I mean, we should even deal. They should want to go to your side because we should be willing to deal even more harshly with our traitors than giving them to you. Okay, so I'm fine if some of our own frauds in there get exposed. Cool. Thanks for telling us who they were. All right, and you can't disappoint me now. I've been disappointed in politics so many times. I'm undisappointable, I think. Right. So I think there is still tremendous political benefit to this. But much of that is going to be felt in the very first year.
All right, next up we go to Mike Karen Schoaf, who asks, I feel like RFK Jr. is going to face great opposition from the Uniparty. What should Team Trump do to head it off before RFK heads to the Senate for confirmation?
This is one of multiple questions, and some were about different nominees. So I don't know that it requires necessarily an RFK-specific answer. Several people are like, how it's more about the Republican Uniparty, John Thune crowd and what they're going to do.
All right, I want to make sure I answer the question exactly as it was worded. So, Aaron, can you repeat it for me?
So, I feel like RFK Jr. is going to face great opposition from the Uniparty. What should the Team Trump do to head it off before RFK heads to the Senate for confirmation?
I think the number one thing to head off is if there is something we do not know. And I mean, we are dealing with a Kennedy here. Okay. Is there something in the private life or personal life that we do not know? I have to imagine that's all been vetted. I have to imagine. Because other than that, see, the advantage that he has over like a Kash Patel or a Pete Hegseth is him and his views are already so well known. They're already out in the open. You don't have to define that for people. And they've already been defined, which means they don't get to define them either. They've already been defined. Everybody already knows where everybody stands. So the thing that you really want to head off at the pass is there anything else in his personal life that could give a false objection cover to spineless, weak Republicans, which means most of them, to not vote for him, okay? Because none of them have the balls. I shouldn't say not. Very few of them will have the balls to just stand up on issues and say no to him. They're going to need cover. They're going to need a false objection, okay? They're going to need your mom, somehow an email your mom sent you 9 years ago shows up, on in the New York Times. They need something like that, like what they try to do to Pete Hegseth over the weekend. They need something like that to grant cover. Because straight up on the issues, he's going to destroy them at his own confirmation hearing. He'll destroy them. He's done this at way higher levels. He's way more educated on this stuff than they are. He'll crush them. So it's really about how well did you vet him so that the Lisa Murkowskis of the world don't get a false objection reason to vote no. All right, good time to remind you about our friends over at Hillsdale as you are vetting colleges, in fact. Have you thought about vetting maybe our favorite one? For 180 years now, Hillsdale's mission has been to develop the minds and improve the hearts of its students. And today, in just 30 seconds, you can learn what that means by watching a short video at daceforhillsdale.com. Since 1844, Hillsdale College has focused on learning, character, and faith in providing just the kind of education needed to preserve liberty, and they extend their mission nationwide through outreach efforts like their free digest of liberty, Imprimis, and more. See, too many colleges and universities today are indoctrinating their students to hate America, but at Hillsdale, students are going to learn how to love America's traditions and how to keep it the freest and most prosperous nation in history. So take some time out today to learn more about what makes Hillsdale College so special when you go to daceforhillsdale.com, F-O-R, daceforhillsdale.com, F-O-R. Again, head over to daceforhillsdale.com.
Nothing brings back warm Christmas memories like the songs and carols you love. And only Pericarditis and his mRNAs have all your favorite holiday songs in one non-random controlled study.
It's beginning to look a lot like a Vax Pass to get into anywhere you go.
From inspiring hymns like
Oh, holy spike, the protein bloodstream trembling because they lied and it don't stay in your arm. Oh, little town of Wuhan, we can't believe you lied. You're run by creeps who should be put to sleep. Those bats, they don't live nearby.
Two traditional Christmas classics such as
The 12th decade of lockdowns my true lords gave to me. Absolutely freaking nothing. I've been home since
Christmas. You can Zoom with me. Send your kidneys to the people far and near. Do you fear remdesivir?
Then there's those funny novelty songs to lighten the mood.
Grandma got run over by a chromo. He left her to die in an infected nursing home. I really can't stay, baby, it's COVID stand. I really must go, can't, baby, it's COVID stand. I saw mommy masking Santa Claus because the CDC said so last night. Jingle bell, jingle bell, jingle bell palsy. If you dare get that booster, then you sure are ballsy.
And of course, we remember the reason for the season.
Fauci, did you know that your virus would someday wreck the world? Fauci, did you know that your science doesn't know what's a boy or a girl? It came upon Anthony Fauci, a sulfuric presence of old, from demons deep within the earth, who knew that his soul was sold.
But that's not all. This collection has so much more to offer, like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Redfield, All I Want for Christmas Is My Fifth Vaccine, Deck Rochelle with Facts and Data, Whitmer Wonderland, Little Jabber Boy, Have Yourself a Little Waning Efficacy, Happy Christmas, This Is Never Over, and more. All this can be yours for a high price we can't name yet because inflation, but don't let that stop you from this once-in-a-lifetime collection. Call now at 1-900-666-VAX to order. Only available while supply chains last. Must be double masked when you call. Again, that's 1-900-666-VAXX.
Is that going to be the best thing we've ever done? It might be.
We talk about a low bar on the show a lot.
The best we've ever done is a pretty low bar.
That bar is so high right there. I mean, you've made a movie, but honestly, this may top it.
I mean,
I'm not trying to poo-poo that because that is fantastic. I just feel like with all the optimism we've had over the past month,
it doesn't land quite the same.
It's taking me back to a dark place.
That's true. That's a good point. That's a good point. Maybe we shouldn't air it as much this Christmas.
I think the fact that you managed to elevate that out of that dark place is like
true.
It's one of your finest hours.
True.
I agree.
I mean, maybe this is more of a tradition to remind us what we have come out of.
I mean, Aaron, this is our, John Lennon and Paul McCartney getting together and writing Sgt. Pepper's is what that is. I mean, the whole vision for Sgt. Pepper's came from Lennon when he saw a circus insert being for the benefit of Mr. Kite, and then they just sat down and wrote the music and all the presentation. I mean, I did the writing, Aaron did the producing. The way you made that look like those Christmas time live specials from back in the day, the production value on that is so freaking good. And your deadpan narration too is incredible. That's the best thing we're ever going to do, I think.
That's Nehemiah stuff. I cannot come down. I'm doing a great work here.
Yes, I agree. We're never going to do anything better than that, I don't think. So let's not even try. Just shut it down right now and we're ahead.
Have we tried since then? I don't know.
We haven't really been. A lot of people are tuned in daily thinking, you guys are already doing that. You guys are doing a tremendous job of not trying. All right.
When did we do that? Was that 2021?
Christmas of 2020.
2020.
Yeah, Christmas of 2020.
Okay.
Can you believe it's been 4 years since we've done it too? That's crazy. 4 years. Yeah, because there's some things in there we still can't we had to be careful about. Like, you remember when we said it doesn't stay in your arm, we were concerned that was going to get us banned everywhere when we put that on the show. Yeah. Because you still weren't permitted to say at that time that they put something. Stop and think about this.
Yeah.
You were not permitted to say that when they injected something into your bloodstream, it wouldn't stay in the very specific spot the blood would just stop flowing. And it would just calcify there and not be carried by your blood stream. Your blood stream. A stream does what, guys? It's not a blood pond. What's in our bodies is not called the blood pond. Is it called the blood pond? It's called the blood stream. A stream runs, okay?
It's okay. At least Hunter Biden is going free.
I feel better now. Thank you for that. All right, that'll do it for today's show. We're going to stick around and do overtime for Blaze TV subscribers. For the rest of you, we'll see you tomorrow. Until then, Romans 8:28.